Revenge with Karen.
You know that feeling when the air pressure drops right before a thunderstorm? That specific, heavy silence where the birds stop singing and the leaves flip over? That's what the conference room felt like on a Tuesday morning in November. But instead of thunder, the impending disaster was wearing a slim-fit navy suit that was 2 sizes too tight and loafers with absolutely no socks. My name is Sharon. For the last 7 years, I've been the client solutions lead for a global logistics firm. That title sounds vague, which is intentional. It means I fix things. It means when a customized supply chain algorithm for a Fortune 100 company starts hallucinating and routing fresh salmon to a warehouse in Arizona, I'm the one they call at 3 a.m. I don't panic. I don't scream. I just move the pieces on the board until the problem disappears. I don't smoke. I don't drink before 6 p.m. I write with a Mont Blanc pen that cost more than my first car, and I know the names of the children of every C-suite executive in my portfolio. I am the invisible glue that holds a $5 billion portfolio together, and the crown jewel of that portfolio was David Sterling. Sterling isn't his real name, obviously, but the money is real. $5 billion of annual contract value real. He's the kind of client who doesn't sign contracts, he signs alliances. He's old school. He hates slide decks. He hates buzzwords. He hates people who try to sell him things he didn't ask for. We had a rhythm, Sterling and I. We spoke in shorthand. A nod meant yes, a silence meant fix it, and a phone call meant the building was burning down. In 7 years, he had never threatened to leave. Not once. Then came Grant, our CEO, man whose spine is made of wet cardboard, decided we needed to modernize. Apparently, consistent record-breaking profits were too boring. We needed disruption. We needed synergy. We needed a vice president of strategic growth who looked like he'd been manufactured in a lab funded by LinkedIn influencers. Grant breezed into the boardroom for the all-hands meeting like he was hosting a talk show. He had the teeth. He had the tan. Had the energy of a golden retriever that had just ingested a bag of espresso beans. "Team," he started, clapping his hands together. The sound echoed in the silence. "I'm here to tell you that good isn't good enough anymore. We need to be great. We need to be agile. We need to trim the fat." I sat in the back, taking notes in my leather-bound notebook. I've seen guys like Grant before. They come in every 3 years, break everything they touch, collect a massive severance package, fail upward to the next company. Usually, I just keep my head down, protect my clients from their stupidity, and wait for them to implode. It's a survival mechanism. Speaking of survival, look, I know how these stories go. You're probably scrolling through this on your lunch break, hiding from your own version of Grant. If you want to see exactly how I dismantled this man's career brick by brick, do me a favor and hit subscribe and maybe drop an upvote. It helps me know you're out there listening, and trust me, you're going to want a front row seat for the carnage that's coming. Anyway, back to the trim the fat speech. Grant's eyes scanned the room. When they landed on me, there was a flicker of something that wasn't quite recognition. It was assessment, but he didn't see a shark. He saw a middle-aged woman in a charcoal blazer. He saw legacy. He saw furniture. He didn't know that 3 months ago, Sterling's entire European distribution network almost collapsed because of a server migration error. He didn't know that I manually coordinated the rerouting of 45 cargo jets while sitting on my kitchen floor in pajamas, ensuring Sterling didn't lose a single cent. Sterling didn't even know about that. I never told him. That's the job. The client sleeps well because I don't. After the meeting, the CEO, looking nervous, ushered Grant over to me. "Grant, this is Sharon," the CEO said, sweating slightly. "She handles the Sterling account. It's our keystone." Grant smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. It was a smile made of porcelain and ambition. "Sharon, pleasure. I've heard interesting things. You've been on this account for a long time." 7 years, I said, keeping my voice neutral. I offered my hand. His grip was moist and weak, like holding a dead fish. 7 years, he repeated, letting out a performative sigh. That's a lifetime in this industry. Maybe too long. You get complacent. You stop seeing the forest for the trees. My blood temperature dropped about 10 degrees, but my face remained a mask of polite interest. Mr. Sterling values consistency. He's not fond of change for the sake of change. Grant chuckled. He actually chuckled, like I was a child explaining why I believed in the tooth fairy. "Oh, Sharon, everyone loves change if you sell it right. Been looking at the numbers. The margins on the Sterling account are stagnant. We're overservicing him. Too many hours, too much hand-holding. We're leaving money on the table. We're not selling him a service, Grant, I said, my voice hardening just a fraction. We're selling him reliability. If we cut support, he walks. Nobody walks away from a contract this size, Grant said, waving his hand dismissively. He's bluffing. He's got you wrapped around his finger. But there's a new sheriff in town now. I want you to set up a QBR, a quarterly business review, for next week. I want to meet this guy. And Sharon, I'll be leading the presentation. I stared at him. The Sterling QBR was sacred ground. It wasn't a presentation, it was a conversation. We didn't use slides. We sat in armchairs, drank black coffee, and discussed global logistics trends. Bringing Grant into that room was like bringing a clown to a funeral. Grant, I said carefully, Sterling doesn't do standard presentations. Book it, he interrupted, turning his back to me to check his phone. And send me your deck by Friday. I'll need to polish it. We need to dazzle him. Lots of graphs, hockey stick growth, you know the drill. I stood there for a moment, watching him walk away. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, sounding like a flatline. It just ordered me to construct a bomb and place it directly under the foundation of our company. He thought I was just an admin with a fancy title. He thought I was a relic. He had absolutely no idea that the stagnant margins he complained about were the result of me spending company resources to fix internal screw-ups before they reached the client. He didn't know that I was the only reason the Sterling account existed at all. I went back to my desk. Hands were steady, but my heart was hammering a war drum against my ribs. I opened my email. I saw the calendar invite from Grant, Sterling account strategy, new direction. I looked at the accept button. I clicked it. If he wanted a show, I would give him a show. But first, I had to prepare, not for the meeting, but for the war. I opened a new folder on my private drive. I named it the exit. And then I picked up my phone and texted my contact at legal. Hypothetically, I wrote, how enforceable is the non-compete regarding clients I brought in prior to the 2018 merger? The 3 dots bubbled up immediately. The storm wasn't coming. It was here. And Grant had just handed me the umbrella, unaware that I was about to use it to impale him. If there is a hell, it is not fire and brimstone. It is a windowless conference room with a glass whiteboard, stale bagels, a middle manager explaining paradigm shifts to you for 4 hours straight. Wednesday morning, the prep session for the Sterling QBR. I walked in with a concise, 3-page briefing document. It contained the KPIs Sterling actually cared about: on-time delivery rates, customs clearance velocity, and the error reduction metrics from the new Singapore hub. It was clean. It was factual. It was boring to anyone who didn't understand that in logistics. Boring equals profitable. Grant was already there, connecting his MacBook to the 85-inch monitor. He was wearing a vest today, one of those fleece Patagonia numbers that scream I work in venture capital, even though we work in freight shipping. Sharon, he boomed, grab a seat. Let's make some magic. He pulled up a PowerPoint deck. It had 40 slides. 40. A 1-hour meeting with a man who checked his watch if you spoke for more than 30 seconds without making a point. Okay, look at this opener, Grant said, beaming. The first slide featured a stock photo of a diverse group of people high-fiving on top of a mountain. The text overlay read, synergizing tomorrow's velocity today. I felt a migraine physically spawn behind my left eye. Grant, I said, keeping my voice level. Sterling isn't going to like this. He's a data guy. He wants to know why his shipping containers in Hamburg were delayed by 4 hours last month and how we fixed it. Grant waved a hand, dismissing my entire career with a flick of his wrist. Details, Sharon, you're too in the weeds. This is a strategy review. We need to sell the vision. We need him to see that we are an AI-first, blockchain-enabled, cloud-native partner. We don't use blockchain, I pointed out. It's aspirational, he countered. He clicked to the next slide. It was a graph where the y-axis wasn't labeled, but the line went up. This is what I'm talking about, emotional resonance. We spent the next 3 hours dismantling my work. Every time I tried to insert a slide about operational stability, Grant deleted it. Too dense, he'd say, or boring, or my personal favorite, this doesn't pop. Replaced my analysis of the Q3 fuel surcharges with a slide titled The Journey to WOW, featuring a cartoon rocket ship. I am not making this up. A cartoon rocket ship. I need you to understand. I tried one last time, desperation clawing at my throat. Sterling is 70 years old. He built his empire on trucking and cold storage. If you show him a cartoon rocket ship, he's going to think we are mocking him. Grant stopped clicking. He turned to me, his face dropping the cool boss mask for a second to reveal the petty tyrant underneath. You know, Sharon, I'm getting a lot of resistance from you. I was told you were a team player. The accusation hung in the air. The team player trap. The moment you disagree with a bad idea, you're difficult. I am trying to protect the relationship, I said. No, you're trying to protect your turf, Grant snapped. You've been gatekeeping this client for years. Maybe that's why the account is stale. You're afraid of new ideas because they expose the fact that you've been coasting. Coasting. I thought about the Christmas morning I spent on a conference call with customs agents in Mumbai. I thought about the time I personally flew to Detroit to hand-deliver a replacement part for Sterling's assembly line because FedEx was snowed in. Coasting, I repeated, tasting the word. It tasted like ash. Look, Grant sighed, checking his Apple Watch. I don't need you to present. Clearly, you're not on board with the new vision. I'll handle the talking. You just be there too? I don't know, take notes. Answer technical questions if he gets boggy. But let me drive. He was demoting me in my own meeting. He was cutting me out of the conversation I had sustained for nearly a decade. A younger version of me would have fought. I would have yelled. I would have gone to the CEO. But I looked at Grant, at his unearned confidence, his empty buzzwords, his complete lack of respect for the work, and something inside me shifted. It was the shift from employee to architect of your destruction. Okay, I said softly. Grant looked surprised. He expected a fight. Okay, you're the VP, I said, closing my notebook. If this is the direction you want to take, I'll support you. You do the talking, I'll just sit in. Great. Grant clapped again. See, that wasn't so hard. We're going to crush this, Sharon. Pivot to greatness. I walked back to my office. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the sheer effort of holding back the rage. I sat down at my desk. I opened the exit folder again. I started a new document, incident log, date, Nov 14. Event, VP explicitly forbade me from presenting operational data. Instructed to prioritize aspirational marketing material over KPI reporting. Removed me from lead presenter role. I saved the file. Then I opened my email and found the calendar invite for the QBR. I forwarded it to my personal email address. Then I went to the printer. I printed out every single slide of Grant's presentation. The rocket ship, the high-fiving mountain climbers, the unlabeled graphs. I put them in a crisp manila folder. If he was going to drive the car off the cliff, I wasn't just going to watch. I was going to make sure the dashcam was recording in 4K. The meeting was in 48 hours. I spent them in silence. I didn't try to fix his slides. I didn't try to warn the CEO. I just did my regular work, answered my emails, and waited. It's funny how calm you feel when you realize you have nothing left to lose. Grant thought he was sidelining me. He didn't realize he was setting me free. Boardroom on the 40th floor has a view of the entire city, but on Friday morning, the blinds were drawn. Grant wanted the lighting to be cinematic for his projector. Mr. Sterling arrived at 9:58 a.m. He's a man who takes up space not by being loud, but by being dense with gravity. He wore a gray wool suit that probably cost more than Grant's car, and he carried nothing but a single fountain pen. No laptop, no phone. He walked in, shook my hand firmly. Sharon, good to see you. And you, David, I said. It was the only time I used his first name. It was our privilege. Then Grant swooped in. Mr. Sterling, Grant Miller, VP of Strategic Growth. Huge fan of what you've built. Truly disruptive stuff. Sterling looked at Grant's extended hand, then at his face. He shook it briefly, like he was touching a wet railing. Disruptive, Sterling repeated, the word rolling around his mouth like a stone. I sell gravel and logistics, Mr. Miller. I don't disrupt, I deliver. Exactly. Grant pivoted undeterred, but how we deliver, that's where the magic happens. Have a seat. Sterling sat at the head of the table. I sat to his right, my usual spot. Grant stood at the front, clicker in hand. Gentlemen, Sharon, Grant began, dimming the lights even further. Let's talk about the future. The first slide hit the screen. Synergizing tomorrow's velocity today. Heard Sterling inhale slowly through his nose. It was a long, ragged sound. Grant launched into his speech. He talked about vertical integration of ideation. He used the phrase blue sky thinking 3 times in the first 5 minutes. He paced around the room, making big, sweeping gestures. I watched Sterling. He wasn't looking at the screen. He was looking at his hands, folded on the mahogany table. He was perfectly still. 10 minutes in, Grant clicked to the rocket ship slide. We want to take your logistics into the stratosphere. We're talking about a complete reimagining of your supply chain ecosystem. Sterling raised a hand, just 2 inches off the table. Grant stopped mid-sentence. Yes, questions? I love questions. Where is the Q3 report? Sterling asked. His voice was quiet, raspy, and dangerous. Grant blinked. Well, we're looking forward, David. The Q3 numbers are in the appendix. What I really want to focus on is, I lost 2 shipments in Rotterdam last week, Sterling said. Sharon fixed it. I want to know why it happened. I want to know the variance on fuel costs. I want to know why your new API integration failed 3 times on Monday. Grant froze. He didn't know any of this. He hadn't read the briefing. He hadn't listened to me. Right? Grant stammered, sweat starting to bead on his forehead. Technical hiccups. Growing pains. If you look at the holistic view, Sharon, Sterling said, ignoring Grant completely. He turned his chair slightly to face me. Explain the Rotterdam variance. I opened my mouth to speak. I had the numbers memorized. I knew exactly what had happened. A dock strike combined with a software patch glitch that I had manually overridden. But before I could get a word out, Grant stepped between us. He literally physically stepped between me and the client, blocking my line of sight. Mr. Sterling, Grant said, his voice taking on a condescending edge. Sharon doesn't need to bore you with the minutiae. She's support staff. She handles the tickets. I'm here to discuss the strategy. We can have the tech team email you a PDF later if you really care about the small stuff. The room went absolute zero. Support staff, 7 years, late nights, holidays missed, millions of dollars saved. Support staff. I looked at the back of Grant's cheap suit. Then I looked at Sterling. He was staring at Grant with an expression of pure, unadulterated disbelief. I stood up. The sound of my chair scraping against the floor was loud in the silence. Sharon, Grant turned, looking annoyed. We're in the middle of "You're right, Grant," I said. My voice was calm, scarily calm. I'm just support staff. And it sounds like you have the strategy all figured out. I picked up my notebook, picked up my Montblanc pen. Where are you going? Grant hissed, his eyes widening. I looked at Sterling. I held his gaze for a long second. A silent message passed between us. I am not doing this anymore. I'm excusing myself, I said. I wouldn't want to bore you with the minutiae. I walked to the door. Sharon, sit down. Grant barked, panic finally cracking his voice. I didn't turn around. I opened the heavy oak door and stepped into the hallway. As the door clicked shut behind me, I heard Sterling's voice, loud and clear for the first time. Sit down, Mr. Miller, and turn on the lights. I walked down the hallway. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It had stopped. I felt light, weightless. I walked past the open-plan cubicles. I walked past the break room. I walked straight to the elevator. I didn't go back to my desk. I didn't pack my things. I pressed the button for the lobby. I was done. But the game had just begun. I took the subway home at 11 o'clock a.m. It's a strange time to be underground. The car was empty except for a few tourists and a guy sleeping with a guitar case. I sat there, knees pressed together, staring at my reflection in the dark glass opposite me. I looked the same. Same blazer, same hair, but I was unemployed. Well, technically, I was insubordinate, but let's not split hairs. My phone started buzzing before the train even left the station. Grant, 5 missed calls. Grant, Sharon, get back in here immediately. Grant, this is unacceptable behavior. Grant, pick up the phone. CEO, Sharon, what is going on? Call me. I turned the phone to do not disturb. Then I turned it off completely. When I got to my apartment, a quiet, overpriced 1-bedroom in Brooklyn with a view of a brick wall, I didn't pour a glass of wine. I made a pot of black coffee. I changed out of my suit into sweatpants, but I kept the blazer on. It felt like armor. I sat at my kitchen table and opened my personal laptop. Rule number 1 of corporate warfare: he who has the documentation wins. I had been forwarding emails to myself for years. Nothing proprietary, nothing that violated NDA, just CYA, cover your ass threads. Decisions made over my objections, warnings I'd given that were ignored, praise from clients. But now I needed to be specific. I spent the next 6 hours drafting a document. It wasn't a resignation letter. It was a memo of record. I detailed the QBR prep, the refusal to include Q3 data, the specific instruction to mislead the client with aspirational metrics, the public denigration of my role. I wasn't going to send it yet. This was ammunition. Don't fire your gun until you see the whites of their eyes. At 4:00 p.m., I turned my phone back on. It vibrated for solid 2 minutes. 30 texts, 12 voicemails. I listened to one from Grant. Sharon, look, emotions were high, I get it. Maybe I was a bit rough. But walking out on a $5 billion client, that's career suicide. You need to come back, apologize to Sterling, and tell him you were feeling ill. We can spin this. Call me. Career suicide. He still didn't get it. He thought Sterling was mad because I left. He didn't realize Sterling was mad because Grant stayed. Then a text popped up from a number that wasn't saved in my contacts, but I knew by heart. David Sterling, that was the most impressive presentation I've seen in years. I stared at the screen. A small, genuine smile touched my lips. Me, I aim to please. David Sterling, he doesn't know anything, does he? He likes rocket ships. David Sterling, I'm flying back to Zurich tonight. We need to talk. Not about this contract, about the future. Are you legally exposed? My heart did a little flip. This was it. The lifeline, me. I'm reviewing my non-compete. It's standard boilerplate, restricted from soliciting current clients for 12 months. David Sterling, soliciting means you ask me. It doesn't say anything about me asking you. Correct. Walked over to my bookshelf and pulled down my employment contract from 2016. I flipped to page 14, clause 8. B. Non-solicitation. He was right. The language was specific. The employee shall not directly or indirectly solicit, induce, or attempt to induce. If Sterling fired Omnicorp and hired me, I hadn't solicited a thing. He walked. Me, correct. David Sterling, good. Sit tight. Let him sweat for a week. I'm pausing all renewals. Put the phone down. Let him sweat. I decided not to go into the office on Monday or Tuesday. I had accrued 6 weeks of sick leave that I never took because I was too busy saving the company. I logged into the HR portal from home. Request for leave, medical, stress-induced, technically true. Grant was extremely stressful. I spent the next few days in a strange limbo. I watched the chaos unfold from a distance. My work email, which I could still access on my phone, was a dumpster fire. Subject, urgent, Sterling shipment stuck in customs from Grant Miller to Sharon. Sharon, I know you're sick, but we have a situation in Shanghai. Who is the contact for the Port Authority? I can't find it in the CRM. I looked at the email. I knew the contact. It was Mr. Wu. He didn't use the CRM. He used WhatsApp. He only answered if you started the message with a specific greeting in Mandarin. I deleted the email. Another one came in an hour later. From CEO Sharon, we need to talk. Grant says you're ghosting us. The Sterling account is at risk. I didn't reply. I was learning the power of absence. When you are the one holding up the ceiling, you don't need to push it down on top of them. You just have to step away and let gravity do the work. By Wednesday, the silence from my end was deafening, but the noise from their end was about to get a whole lot louder. There's a specific kind of joy in watching a fire you didn't start, but certainly aren't going to put out. Day 4 of my medical leave. I was at a coffee shop, drinking a latte that cost $6, reading a book about gardening. I don't garden. I just liked the metaphor of pruning dead branches. My phone was still blowing up. The tone had shifted from anger to desperation. The thing about Grant's strategy to cut support hours, he actually did it. He implemented it the Monday I didn't show up. He sent a memo to the Sterling team, which was now just 2 terrified junior analysts and him, saying that all non-critical communication with the client would be routed through a central ticketing system. No more direct calls. No more texting. Just tickets. A client moving perishable goods across 40 international borders. The collapse happened on a Thursday. I found out because the junior analyst, a sweet kid named Kevin who I'd been mentoring, sent me a message on LinkedIn. Kevin, Sharon, I know I shouldn't message you, but I'm literally shaking. Grant told us to ignore the priority flag on the Munich shipment because he said it was a system glitch. It wasn't a glitch. It was vaccines. Been sitting on the tarmac for 12 hours. They're spoiling. I stared at the screen. Vaccines. This wasn't just corporate politics anymore. This was negligence. I had a choice. I could intervene, save the shipment, and prove my value, or I could let Grant own his mistake. But these were vaccines. People needed them. I sighed, closed my book, and pulled up my contacts. I couldn't fix it officially, but I could fix it quietly. I texted a contact at the Munich airport ground crew. Hands, check container 404 Bravo. Temperature gauge might be faulty. Manual override to cold storage ASAP. Do it as a favor to me. Hands for you, done, but tell your new boss he is an idiot. He filed the paperwork as dry goods. I screenshotted the exchange. Added it to the exit folder. I texted Kevin back. Don't worry about Munich. It's handled, but keep your head down. Document everything Grant tells you to do. Back at the office, the CEO finally decided to step in. He didn't call me, he sent Linda. Linda was the head of HR. She was one of those women who treated the company like a church and the employee handbook like the Bible. She spoke in hushed, reverent tones about corporate culture and family. She called me at noon. "Sharon," she said, her voice dripping with artificial concern. "We're so worried about you." This silence. "It's not like you, we're a family here. You can't just abandon your family because of a little disagreement with a cousin." She called Grant my cousin. "I'm under a lot of stress, Linda," I said, channeling my inner soap opera actress. "My doctor advised a complete disconnect." "I understand," Linda cooed. "But Grant is really trying to bridge the gap. He feels you were resistant to his leadership. He wants to welcome you back. He's even willing to let you keep your title. You'll report to him directly for daily task management." Daily task management. They wanted to micromanage the person who built the department. "Linda," I said, "did Grant tell you about the Munich shipment? The what?" "No. We're talking about your attitude, Sharon. Ask him about the vaccines, Linda. Ask him why the client's legal team just downloaded the audit logs for the last 48 hours. What?" Her voice spiked. "I'm resting now, Linda. I'll update you on my return date next week." I hung up. The audit logs part was a bluff, but it was a calculated one. I knew Sterling's legal team, they were sharks. If they smelled blood, they would be downloading everything. 10 minutes later, I got a notification. "System alert. User admin has initiated a full data export of the Sterling account." It wasn't Sterling's team, it was Grant. He was panicking. He was trying to find out what I knew. Or maybe he was trying to delete evidence of his own incompetence. He didn't realize that the system logs every export, including his. I sat back and sipped my coffee. The cracks weren't just in the foundation anymore. The walls were buckling. And the best part, I hadn't even resigned yet. I was still on the payroll, accruing sick pay, while watching them burn the building down around themselves. Then the email came. The one I had been waiting for, from David Sterling to CEO, Grant Miller CC. Sharon personal email subject. "Notice of contract review, gentlemen, effective immediately. We are suspending all new initiatives. We will be conducting a review of our service level agreement violations over the past week. We expect a formal response regarding the Munich incident by EOD. P.S. Please ensure Sharon is present at the upcoming strategy summit. Her absence has been noted." Boom. CC'd my personal email. He wanted them to know I was in the loop. He wanted them to know he knew. Grant was dead. He just didn't know enough to lie down yet. They asked me to come in on Monday to discuss a path forward. I dressed for a funeral, all black, stiletto heels that clicked like gunshots on the tile floor. I didn't bring a notebook. I didn't bring a pen. When I walked into the office, the atmosphere had changed. The receptionists stopped typing. Junior analysts looked at me with wide, terrified eyes, like I was a ghost returning to haunt the castle. Kevin gave me a tiny, covert thumbs up from his cubicle. I winked. I walked into the CEO's office. Grant was there, pacing. He looked terrible. His tan had faded into a sallow yellow. His suit looked slept in. The CEO was sitting behind his desk, looking like he wished he could dissolve into his ergonomic chair. "Sharon," the CEO said, forcing a smile. "Thank you for coming in. We need to reset." "Reset," I repeated, remaining standing. "Look," Grant started, his voice jagged. "We had a rocky start. Okay, I admit it, I'm a disruptor. Sometimes I break things, but we need you back on the box. Sterling is difficult right now." "Difficult," I said, "or litigious?" Grant flinched. "We need you to smooth it over," Grant said, stepping closer. "Call him. Tell him the Munich thing was a vendor error. Tell him we're on top of it. Use that charm of yours." He wanted me to lie. He wanted me to cash in 7 years of integrity to cover his 3 days of stupidity. "I can't do that, Grant," I said. "Why not?" He snapped. "It's your job. You're the client solutions lead." "Not anymore," I said. I reached into my blazer pocket and pulled out a white envelope. I placed it on the CEO's desk. "This is my resignation. Effective 2 weeks from today. I will spend those 2 weeks transitioning my files. But I will not speak to the client. I will not lie to the client. And I will certainly not report to him." I pointed at Grant. "You can't quit." Grant yelled. "We have the summit next week. You have to be there." "Oh, I'll be there," I said. "Sterling requested my presence. As a courtesy to the client, I will attend. But I'll be sitting in the audience, watching you disrupt." The CEO looked at the letter. "Sharon, please. Let's talk numbers. A raise, more equity." "It's not about the money," I said. And for the first time, it really wasn't. It was about the principle. It was about the fact that they looked at my work, my life's work, and called it support staff. I have a non-compete, I said, preempting their threat. I know it. I wrote half of it with legal back in 2016. I won't solicit your clients. I won't steal your data. I'm going to take a nice long vacation. You're bluffing. Grant sneered. You have nowhere to go. You're aged out of the market. You think some startup is going to hire a 45-year-old logistics manager. There it was, the ageism, the misogyny. It all spilled out in one ugly sentence. I smiled, a real smile. Grant, I said softly, you think the market is LinkedIn and algorithms. The market is people. And unlike you, I haven't pissed off every person I've ever met. I turned to leave. If you walk out that door, Grant threatened, I will make sure you never work in this industry again. I paused at the door. Grant, by next week, you won't even be working in this industry. I walked out. I went to my desk and started packing, not much. Just the photo of my dog, my Mont Blanc pen, and the little crystal award I won 3 years ago. Kevin rolled his chair over. Are you really leaving? He whispered. Yeah, Kevin, I am. What am I going to do? He looked panicked. Handed him a sticky note with a phone number on it. You're going to wait 3 weeks. Then you're going to call this number. It's a recruiter I know. She places people in firms that actually pay overtime. He took the note like it was a holy relic. I left the building at 2:00 p.m. The sun was shining. I felt like I had just dropped a heavy backpack I'd been carrying for a decade, but I wasn't going on vacation. I went home, opened my laptop, registered a new LLC, SM Solutions. I didn't have any clients yet. I couldn't ask for them. But I knew something Grant didn't. I knew that Sterling was coming to the summit not to renew, but to execute, and I had a front row seat. The Q4 Strategy Summit was held at the Ritz-Carlton. Chandeliers, shrimp cocktails, and a room full of people pretending everything was fine when the stock price was down 12%. I wore a red dress. Look at me red, blood in the water red. I arrived early and took a seat near the back. I wasn't an employee anymore, technically. I was serving out my notice period. I was a ghost at the feast. Grant was on stage doing a sound check. He looked manic. He was shouting at an AV technician about the bass levels on his intro music. Yes, he had intro music. Eye of the Tiger. I wish I was joking. The room filled up. Board members, investors, key clients. I saw the CEO shaking hands, his smile looking more and more like a grimace. Grant spotted me in the back. He glared. He actually made a cutthroat gesture, then realized a board member was watching and turned it into an awkward collar adjustment. Then the doors at the back of the room opened. Silence rippled through the room. It wasn't just a quiet, it was a vacuum. David Sterling walked in. He wasn't alone. He had his entourage, his CFO, his legal counsel, and his CTO. They moved in a phalanx, a V formation of expensive suits and serious faces. Usually, clients sit at the round tables near the front. Sterling didn't sit. He stood at the back, arms crossed. Grant tapped the microphone. Thump, thump, all right. Let's get this party started, he yelled. Welcome, everyone, to the future of logistics. The music started, the lights flashed. It was embarrassing. It was like watching a magician try to perform at a crash site. I want to welcome our most valued partner, Grant said, gesturing to Sterling. David Sterling. David, come on down. We have a special seat for you right here in the front. Sterling didn't move. The spotlight swung over to him, illuminating his stone face. I'm fine where I am, Sterling said. His voice didn't need a microphone, it carried. Oh, okay, Grant stammered. Well, folks, let's dive in. As you know, I've been pivoting to a lean, agile methodology. Grant launched into his deck. The rocket ships were back. The buzzwords flew: paradigm, synergy, blockchain. I watched Sterling. He was watching Grant with the detached curiosity of a biologist studying a particularly stupid bug. Then, Grant put up a slide. Case study, Sterling Global, a partnership reimagined. It showed a graph of efficiency savings, claimed that by streamlining communication, aka the ticketing system, they had saved 20% in operational costs. Sterling leaned over to his CFO and whispered something. The CFO nodded and handed Sterling a folder. Grant kept talking, and we believe this model is scalable. We can do this for all of you. He was selling his failure as a feature. I looked around the room. The other clients were nodding politely. They didn't know. They didn't know about the vaccines. They didn't know about the silence. I felt a vibration in my clutch, a text. From David Sterling to, Sharon, are you ready? I looked across the room. Sterling caught my eye. He nodded. Me always. Sterling stepped forward, into the light. Excuse me, he said. Grant stopped. David, we usually save Q and A for the end, buddy. This isn't a question, Sterling said. He walked down the center aisle. Room parted for him like the Red Sea. Mr. Miller, Sterling said, reaching the stage. He didn't climb the stairs. He stood at the bottom, looking up at Grant. That graph. The efficiency savings. Yes. Impressive, right? Grant beamed. Those savings came from firing the support staff who monitored my cold chain, Sterling said, which resulted in $400,000 of spoiled pharmaceuticals in Munich last Thursday. A gasp went through the room. Board members sat up straight. Grant's smile faltered. That was a glitch. We fixed it. No, Sterling said. You didn't fix it. Sharon fixed it from a coffee shop while she was on leave. Grant looked at me. The whole room turned to look at me. I don't have a contract with Omnicorp, Sterling announced, his voice booming now. I have a contract with Competence. And it seems Competence has left the building. He turned to the board of directors. I'm invoking the immediate termination clause of my contract due to gross negligence. You can't do that. The CEO jumped up. David, please. I just did, Sterling said. My legal team filed the papers 10 minutes ago. He turned back to me. Sharon, he said, are you coming? I stood up. My red dress smoothed out. I picked up my purse. I think I will, I said. I walked down the aisle. I walked past the CEO, who looked like he was having a stroke. I walked past the investors. I met Sterling in the aisle. Where are we going? I asked quietly. Lunch, he said, and then to talk about your new consultancy. I have some friends who are very unhappy with their current logistics providers. We walked out of the ballroom together. Behind us, the feedback from the microphone screeched, drowning out Grant's desperate stuttering. It was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. We went to a steakhouse down the street, kind with white tablecloths and waiters who don't introduce themselves by name. Sterling ordered a bottle of wine that was older than Grant. To disruption, he toasted, a twinkle in his eye. To competence, I corrected, clinking my glass against his. By the time the appetizers arrived, my phone was vibrating off the table. Kevin, holy shit, Sharon. The CEO is screaming. Grant is crying, literally crying. Security is escorting him out. Legal, Sharon. Need to discuss your NDA. Recruiter, Sharon, hearing wild things. Call me. I turned my phone over. So Sterling said, cutting his steak. SM Solutions, tell me about it. It's a boutique firm I improvised. Specializing in high-touch, crisis-proof logistics for legacy clients. No apps, no tickets, just answers. I'll take a retainer, Sterling said. Same rate as Omnicorp was charging me. But you keep the overhead. I did the math in my head. If I took Sterling's account at the agency rate, without the agency bloat, I would make more in a month than I made in a year at Omnicorp. Deal, I said. And Sterling added, I have 3 friends, CEOs of manufacturing firms. They were in that room. They just texted me. They want your number. Send it, I said. Back at the Ritz-Carlton, the apocalypse was happening. According to Kevin, my embedded spy, the board held an emergency meeting in the hallway. Stock had dropped another 8% in the hour since Sterling walked out. News travels fast on Wall Street. Grant was fired before he left the stage. They didn't even let him get his coat. Security walked him out through the kitchen so he wouldn't be seen by the investors. The CEO tried to damage control, but it was too late. The Sterling walkout was already a story. It was the signal that the ship was sinking. Over the next 48 hours, Omnicorp lost 4 more major accounts. All of them called me. I didn't steal them. I didn't solicit them. They called me. Sharon, we heard what happened. Can you take us on? I can, I told them. But my rates have gone up, and I don't do PowerPoint. I hired Kevin a week later. I doubled his salary and gave him the title of Director of Operations. He cried. I rented a small office, not in a glass tower, in a brownstone. Hardwood floors, eel plants. The lawsuit from Omnicorp came, of course. They tried to sue me for poaching. Sterling's lawyers responded with a letter that was essentially a legal go F yourself, citing the breach of contract and negligence regarding the Munich shipment. Omnicorp dropped the suit in 3 days. They couldn't afford the discovery phase. They knew what I had in the exit folder. Grant tried to reach out on LinkedIn a month later. Grant, hey Sharon. No hard feelings, right? Business is business. I'm launching a new crypto logistics startup. Reckless Innovation EO, would love to pick your brain. I didn't block him. I didn't reply. I just left him on read. Because that's what support staff does. We support. And when we stop supporting, the whole thing falls down. 6 months later. SM Solutions has 12 employees. We handle $12 billion in logistics contracts. We don't have a strategy VP. Have a coffee machine that actually works, and a rule that no meeting can last longer than 20 minutes. I bought the building. I was sitting in my office, looking out at the rain, when I saw the news alert. Omnicorp announces restructuring. selling logistics division to private equity firm for pennies on the dollar. They were being chopped up for parts. The brand equity Grant talked about was worthless. The legacy they despised was the only thing that had value. It had walked out the door in a red dress. I took a sip of my espresso. It's funny. Grant was right about one thing. We did need to trim the fat. He just didn't realize that he was the fat. I don't hate Grant. I don't hate the CEO. They were just symptoms of a disease. The disease of thinking that shiny new things are better than things that actually work. The disease of thinking that the people who do the work are interchangeable cogs. Forgot the golden rule of mechanics, whether it's HVAC or global supply chains. You don't piss off the person who holds the wrench. My phone rang. It was Sterling. Sharon, he said, I'm in Tokyo. The port is congested. They're saying 3 days delay. I'm already on it, David, I said, spinning my Mont Blanc pen in my fingers. I rerouted the shipment to Yokohama an hour ago. Trucking is arranged. You'll lose 4 hours, not 3 days. There was a silence on the line. A comfortable, expensive silence. You're worth every penny, Sharon. I know, I said. I hung up. I looked at the exit folder on my desktop. I dragged it to the trash. Empty trash? Yes. I didn't need the insurance anymore. I was the insurance. I turned back to my work. The rain washed the city clean, and for the first time in 7 years, I didn't feel like I was holding up the sky. I was just flying in it.
Life has its storms, but it also has its calm waters. Thanks for sharing this moment with me. See you in the next one.